In entrepreneurship, one of the most difficult aspects is having to build on your own, feeling like everything just weighs on your shoulders because your success is directly connected to the amount of effort that you put in your business. But what if you did not have to build alone? What if there was another option outside of hiring just employees? What if there was a way for you to get that higher level insight from a peer group? Well, today I have a guest who I have known personally for years, who is a serial entrepreneur who has been involved in everything to purchasing of franchises to real estate to coaching, just a little bit of everything, successful in all the things. And today he is here to share what he's working on right now. So without further ado, I want to welcome Mr. Arturo Lopez. Hi, my love.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me on.
I am great. Thank you for agreeing to be on the show. I know you to be a guy who is just always doing something, who is always thinking bigger than just, I'm going to do a thing. Everything you do is so mission driven, but I want to give you a chance to tell the audience a little bit more about what you do.
First of all, I lead a business chair. That's been my passion for the last 12 years. I founded AGO Holdings almost 16 years ago. And as you mentioned, I was a former owner of True Blue Houston, actually was a master territory owner, absorbed 5 territories during the pandemic and was able to sell those over the past 2 years. And so now I'm focused on helping CEOs and business owners build and grow their business to, a happy exit and actually take care of their family legacy.
I think that is the thing that is so unique about you because you're not just in the space of learning a certain skill set and teaching it to others, but you've actually lived it. Everything that you're helping entrepreneurs to do right now, you've actually lived that. So I want to take it a step back and let's go to that beginning and let's talk about what got you started in this industry.
Sure. So I had graduated from business school during the financial crisis. And so there wasn't a lot of financial firms, private equity, family offices that were actively hiring. And so it was when I came across my mentor, who ran one of the top investment banks here in Houston. He actually refused to hire me, and to this day, I still tell that story, and he won't admit or doesn't like when I tell that story. But uh, he finally admitted to me. He came, he brought me to his boardroom, and he sat me down and he said, Arturo, I'm not going to give you a job, and I can't tell you why. And in that industry, that usually means that they're in some sort of transaction or they're in, an NDA where they can't really speak about what's going on in their firm. And his concern was he actually did care about me and didn't want me to get lost in the acquisition and transition as kind of the new face in the door. And so he said, I've been doing this for over 40 years. Would you be interested in me mentoring you and teaching you how to be an entrepreneur and build your own business? And so that's how at 26 years old, I was a CEO running my own private equity and consulting firm, helping businesses in Latin America do business in Texas, and then businesses here in Texas expand their outreach into Latin America.
Wow, that is such a God ordained blessed interaction to have someone who truly sees you and sees your potential and says, brings an opportunity to you that is solely focused on what's best for you and not just what's best for them. So I'm so glad that you shared that because I know sometimes people feel like that a no is a no and it's the end of the world, but sometimes no really isn't that. Sometimes no is just a door opening for something else for you, and that's exactly what it was in your case. Now, how did you transition from that to being an owner of a True Blue franchise?
Sure. So I had been, leading a peer group, coaching entrepreneurs, and I'm used to being the youngest face in the boardroom. However, I didn't want to be the only one that didn't have an experience. Um, there's a saying, I wanted to drink my own champagne, right? So if I wanted someone to do something, I wanted them to know that, I was with them in the trenches. I had bought the t-shirt, it didn't fit anymore. And so I had married into a family business, and she was the CFO at the time, and so I was exposed to the family business. Being that I went to bed with the CFO every night, but I wasn't necessarily still active in the entrepreneurship. Her family called us one morning and told us that they were about to be sold to private equity, and that there was a good chance that her salary wasn't going to be there anymore.
Wow.
Now, you know, entrepreneurs can pretty much handle anything. What we just don't like is surprises. And so having about 24 hours notice that half of your family income was about to go away, and having small children, you really start to be creative. And so that's when I looked at franchise opportunities where we could build systems and replace her income. She wouldn't necessarily have to work full time, but it would be something that I could uh, help her build, but also leverage her resources within the medical community and her financial acumen.
Wow. I don't think I ever knew the full story behind that. So, you guys, we truly have known each other for years, and that's actually how we met was when he was an owner of True Blue and on the real estate side. And what always stood out to me was how incredibly professional he was. And that was just such a stark contrast to most people who are in that industry. And it's just very, I'm a guy who does a thing, is what you usually get. But you just came into the program with such professionalism and such, this is how we handle this, and this is what we do here. And all of your marketing things just kind of put together. So, tell us a little bit more about what the experience was like with operating the franchise, and what did they give you to help you with managing that?
I think the first thing you lean into, especially when you make an investment like that, is the leadership team. And so we had a president that not only had a marketing background, but was specific to um, the senior industry. And so for me, it was having that resource there, and then them forcing us to go to training. So we actually had to fly to Ohio, both both of us as owners. We both signed on the line, and they wanted to get to know us. And it was much of an interview of us as for them. And so that was one of the things that they did, is they provide us training so that any question that we were asked by a potential client or vendor or strategic partner, we knew the answer to, because it was something that they were doing across 200 other owners across the US. And what I really appreciated, being that I'm a techie myself, is they were really technology leaning. They provided us a CRM, they provided us resources for payroll. There wasn't really anything that we needed to necessarily reinvent the wheel, as much as just educate ourselves to be able to use it on a daily basis. We wanted something that we could run from our iPad or iPhone, from whether it be out of the office or with our kids at the beach.
Now, how did you come to the realization that it's time to sell? It's time to transition and to do something else.
So I had always had an exit in plan. So the goal was to eventually sell. As I mentioned, the reason we were interested in the business uh, was because we wanted to replace her income. When she filed for divorce, there was less of a need to replace her income, and the purpose behind it was almost gone. Like I had a passion for seniors because of experiencing the loss of my father. A couple of months after that, but whenever you really don't align with the business you're building, it's better to sell and open up an opportunity for someone else.
That's very true. Now, with entrepreneurship, as we've said, building on your own is so incredibly difficult. And you had multiple businesses going at the same time. You had family things that you were dealing with at that time. Tell me, how did you lift yourself through or grow through that period in time?
Um, the first thing I did was reach out to people that had been there for me, even since my childhood. Real strengths in the community, and the majority of them kind of reinforced what I already knew I needed to do, which was to lean into my own faith harder than I ever had before. And so that was really the main thing is to surround yourself with people that align with your culture, align with not necessarily your faith, but your belief in something higher than yourself, because life will put you in situations where you absolutely aren't capable of doing it on your own.
Yeah, I say all the time, if you want to know the true meaning of the words, let go and let God, start a business because it truly will test you in some very creative ways. And I love that you took it outside of just the professional side. And it really is important for us to spend more time thinking about who we associate ourselves with. A lot of us have circles that no longer reflect the person who we are growing into. They reflect the person we used to be. And a lot of times we still hold on to that because of a mixture between loyalty, between guilt, between just not understanding what new boundaries may be needed for those relationships. And for those who find themselves in that position, it's another reason why I'm so glad to have you on the show, because the group that you created, the Houston CEO, I think is amazing, because not everybody comes from having a very supportive circle. Not everyone has entrepreneurs around them. And I can personally attest to how different it is when you have conversations with your friends who aren't entrepreneurs and they don't quite get the things or the conversation that you may want to have when you're talking about certain things you have going on with your business. They may take it as a complaint, and it's just kind of like, well, no, it's growing pains, and I was hoping for creativity. Like, let's talk this thing through. And your group does exactly that. So tell everyone more about the Houston CEO.
Sure. So it's a tribe that I built, alongside the Vicious platform. And, just as one example, I have one individual that's been with me for all 12 years. Now, this particular individual is probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. East Coast educated, worked in the professional services in one of the top firms. And when I met them, had launched his own family business. Now, one of the things that he didn't realize is that he was slowly failing, and the only people that were surrounding him were his family. So the everything was the business, and so he didn't really have an opportunity to share with anyone, to get ideas, because they were with him all the time, and they were the ones, honestly, that expected him to have all the answers. That's really what the tribe did for him, is help him understand that, a slow burn is still going to eventually burn you,
Yeah.
right? And so they challenged him to really evaluate what was possible and whether he should even be in a family business to begin with. So if we fast forward, to today, um, his company is probably one of the industry leaders in an unrelated industry in the dental space. So, they're probably going to have a nine-figure exit,
Wow.
and it's a company that anyone that's a hygienist, dentist office, or um, in the dental industry would probably have heard of it. They control about 40% of the Houston market now, and I think are in about 14 cities across the U.S. So, believe me, when he thinks of just having that ability to pivot and get feedback from people that really want you to be successful, that's really what Houston CEOs was founded for to begin with. And then
Wow.
just one other example, because it's kind of a dichotomy, a different perspective is, feeling that I'm a military brat, I have a special place in my heart for our veterans. And so when I came across a business owner who's a veteran, he he expected us to come and just give him all the answers. Now, when I tell you in the day that we live in, a business owner there's no shortage of information. There's plenty of answers there. You can ask any sort of, resource or technology for an answer, and they'll give you something back. What was even more beautiful about what the tribe did for him is they listened and waited for him to understand that he needed to just go from his head to his heart and understand that what he was trying to process was an outcome that he had zero to almost zero control over. And so it's one of those things where you need to understand whether it's a season that you're going through or a problem you need to solve. And as a risk averse military person, he kept trying to solve the problem where no problem was alive, right? It hadn't existed, nor was it planning on existing. So those are kind of the two examples of what have really resonated with the Houston CEOs over, say the past decade.
No, they're perfect examples, and it definitely illustrates the benefit to having a diverse group with unique life experiences and coming from different backgrounds. Because if I'm not mistaken, you don't have to be in a specific industry to be a part of Houston CEOs, correct?
No, in fact, we encourage the diversity. Obviously, more female participation, open diversity. We
You hear
love
that,
that.
ladies? We're wanted as a part of Houston CEOs. And it is very true. It's everyone knows the saying, your net worth is your net worth. But what do you do if you're just not starting off with the best network and you're providing a really great option for that? Now, I know we're going to have some people who are very interested just off of the few stories that you've shared. So tell a bit more about what a person gets as a part of membership within that tribe.
Sure. Most of it is around our methodology, which is we want to make sure that we have enough information about you and your business and where exactly you want to go. So one of the things I encourage people to think about is that in life, we're always told that we need to make a decision. And then we go to school and we learn that there's multiple choice. There's an answer there. You just have to pick the best one for that particular situation. What you get with Houston CEOs is an idea of what we call our perspective, which is at least three options. And that's on a scale, right? It's not necessarily what's best for you, but where do you feel like it would resonate best for you, your business, and your family, right? And so, for an example for that, because you asked me about what I've been doing, is we have businesses that are family businesses that want to continue through the generations, which means they have no intention of selling. Well, you're going to grow and run a business differently that wants to last 100 years than the business I mentioned today, which is a technology company where when they get to a certain run rate and a certain earnings, as soon as someone will write them a big enough check, they're out the door. Now, it might seem egocentric or maybe a little bit, materialistic, but there's nothing wrong with that because that was the goal that they set. And so with Houston CEOs, we don't necessarily judge as much as we coach you and help you get a methodology that's going to resonate with you.
I think that is exactly what the market really needs because we're in this weird place generationally where there are boomers who have built businesses that they really haven't established past them being the head of the business. And what a lot of them are finding is that their kids do not have a desire to really take over. And what does that look like? What do you do in that scenario? Do you just let the business fizzle out when it has so much potential? And what I've found is that in most cases, a lack of system is really the biggest issue, even for the next generation wanting to or not wanting to take over. No one wants to take over a headache on purpose. So you coming in and really helping people to understand that there's another option, I think is just so admirable. But I would be remiss if I did not ask this question. Now, given that you have access to so many successful businesses, tell me about some of the trends that you're seeing right now. We know AI is, of course, one, but specifically, what are you seeing happening? What conversations are these CEOs having?
Technology is definitely a different one, not necessarily AI because it's here. Most of
Right.
us are old enough to have experienced the internet boom. So it's whether you are riding the wave, ahead of the wave, or you're going to get sucked under. I think is with regard to artificial intelligence. I think we're going to see a almost like fashion where we're kind of going back to the basics in leadership, right? People are asked to come back to the office after the pandemic, and then it's like, well, we forgot to talk to each other, right? So what does it mean to communicate and communicate clearly, and also with diversified teams? So where I'm really seeing is I'm bringing in resources that are helping people discern whether they need to let someone be open to other opportunities or maybe at another organization, or really dive down and do the retreats and build a team and make sure that they're a cohesive team so that they can take on any challenges, right? Companies are getting leaner, not necessarily because they need to, they're getting leaner because they're becoming more efficient. And they're understanding that if, as long as the communication is there and the team is working in a high performing way, then they're only going to excel. So I really feel like that's, kind of the true team building communication methodology is making a resurgence, and I think in a good way.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's a conversation more people need to have about the fact that not all of the downsizing in employment size for a lot of companies is due to the company itself struggling. In a lot of ways, it's because they had people in positions that were redundant and unnecessary. And when you are trying to figure out how to maximize your business profits and you start really looking at what do we really need, they're finding that that isn't necessarily, those weren't positions that they really needed. Now, when it comes to finding people for your group, what are some of the methods that you're using right now that are working very well for you?
uh, the number one way is always referrals. I mean, when I get introduced from a business owner or CEO from a current peer member, or even someone who says, "Listen, I don't think I'm a fit, but I think my buddy is because they're struggling with X." That's usually the way that it's coming across. So most of it has come through referrals, and then we're very active on social media from an educational standpoint. You won't hear us selling. We're really educating the community on what are the things that we're talking about, what is the research that we're facing, and how can you, whether you're part of the group or not, leverage it. And so I think um, social media is one of those necessary evils where, because the baby boomers are kind of thinking about retirement, entrepreneurs, or the age is also starting to align with youngers, which are on social media, and leveraging that. Less email and less phone.
So, what is your favorite platform right now?
My favorite platform is probably going to be Instagram.
And what are you finding as successful content for you guys on Instagram?
Most of it's going to be polls because I feel like you're asking them questions and getting feedback in a facilitated way. You have a concept where someone might necessarily know the answer, but with a poll, at least you know that it's there, and it gives them that perspective of, what would be the worst case scenario from the best case scenario, and you know that the real life is somewhere going to be somewhere in between.
I love that. I definitely have enjoyed this conversation, and I just have to know what is next for you.
I mean, for me, I really want to build a global platform. I really believe that there's entrepreneurs that I can help and leverage my international background, whether it being preparing to sell or helping them with whatever that transition is from leadership. Like me, my mentor, we are not of the same religion, we're not of the same skin color, and we're, nowhere near related. That 23andMe can prove. But he's treated me like a father, and I feel like there's so many more opportunities where young, specifically female entrepreneurs have the potential to step in that leadership role when they want to.
I love that you are conscious about the need for diversity, but we live in a world where people just want to be in their silos and they want to be surrounded by people who look exactly like them, think exactly like them, but you really do yourself a disservice because you're not forcing your brain to expand and to see things from different perspectives, and that's something sometimes that can only happen by having input from others. So I'm very thankful that you guys are so conscious of making sure that you are bringing about diversity. And I know there are plenty of people who are watching right now who want to get in contact with you. So I am going to make sure that we put all of your contact information in the show notes. What is the best way that they can reach out to you?
The best way is just our website, houstonceos.com. There's a contact me for them to learn more and figure out what really resonates. Two things I'll leave with is that every data research that I've seen reinforces that the more women that are sitting at the boardroom table, the better the company performs. And I would just want to leave with a note, whoever's listening, that just to remember that you're not stuck, you're just alone.
I love that. That was a perfect mic drop moment. I did not know that statistic, but it does not surprise me at all. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you for coming here today and being so transparent about your story and giving us a new way of really thinking about entrepreneurship and what it means to build something, and knowing that it doesn't have to be the business that we create, doesn't have to be our forever business, right? Because I think that's something also that people falsely think. They stress themselves out because they're trying to make an idea that they came up with maybe 10 years ago fit where they're at right now, the season where they're at right now, or the season that they see for themselves in the future, and it just doesn't. And it definitely doesn't have to be that way. Arturo, thank you so much. It is always a pleasure whenever we get a chance to chit chat and update on things. You guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Entrepreneurship Now. Until next time, bye, my cherished loves.
Thank you.